Ladies and gentlemen, this is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital, the only station in the nation broadcasting in HD, WESN television with a difference. My name is Sean Michael Small, and I will be joined by my co-host shortly. But in the meantime, we'll have some topics to discuss on this pleasant day. I do wonder how many of you are dealing with traffic today. However, let's go straight into the daily review. And the first thing that I want to get into is the fact that the Integrity Commission is, it seems as though they might have to go to court in order to ensure that certain members of Parliament are in compliance with the law to declare their wealth. It's an interesting situation because I always say that transparency can be used for you. It makes me wonder exactly what it is that politicians are thinking when they believe that, secrecy and covering things up, not saying anything, not taking questions, leaving the public to speculate. That's the best part. Because then they complain that the public is speculating and making wrong assumptions and have the wrong idea and don't know what they're talking about. Well, if you don't want the public to not speculate on things that they don't know what they're talking about, the easiest remedy to that is to be truthful, be transparent as much as possible, all the time. Be upfront with as much things as you can all the time. There will always be things that you, either it's just not anyone else's business because at the end of the day, politicians are people too, or it might be important to the state. It's just not something that you could give out. It could be a question of timing. Depending with regards to criminal proceedings, at the very least, the release of footage and so forth is a question of timing. You have to consider or give due consideration to ensuring the trial is fair, but also giving out correct information to the public so they aren't left speculating. Same thing with politicians. You might have a deal in the works. Perhaps you don't necessarily want to talk about the upcoming agreement or when it was still being negotiated with the US to allow TNT to negotiate and do business with Venezuela until it was the right time. Because if it was premature, then the deal might go bust. I understand that. But now we're talking about their assets and income of the individuals. And I'm not going to say that, there isn't some degree or some very real possibility that within the list there will be those trying to hide something. And it could be something big or it could be something small. When your job puts you in the public spotlight, even small things, you might go to great lengths to hide them. And everybody on the outside looking in might think, oh my gosh, this is going to be some big bacchanal, when in reality it's not big, but the person in question might be just trying to hide something that would inconvenience them, and they're taking it too far. Now the list, it's pretty extensive. We have government MPs like Stuart Young, Penelope Beckles, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly, Marvin Gonzalez, Simon de Nobrega. These are all, for all intents and purposes, ministers, cabinet ministers, as well as government senators who also hold ministerial portfolios like Paula Gopi-Schoon, Randall Mitchell. But then now, there's also opposition MPs, including one who is, he's under some more significant scrutiny like David Lee. But then there's also Dr. Rudal Munilal, Dinesh Rambali, opposition senators like Jayanti Lakshmi-Dayal and Damian Lyder, and even some temporary or acting senators like Harvey Boris and Dr. Tim Gopi-Schoon. Now, some of these people I've actually met, and to various degrees I've interacted with them. In some cases I've met only once, in other cases I've spoken to more than once, so I got a bit more of a gauge for their personality, or at least the persona that they project. And they always say that politicians, they're all nice people, and they're really nice and they're polite for the most part. When you're in a social setting, maybe not in a contentious press conference. What is it that they have to hide? Some of these people, I would say, you would hope would be the future of the nation, because we only have so many politicians. Not a lot of people want to enter into politics, so we do have to look at what we have. And some of the people on this list are people who we might have considered to be the best of the lot. So now the question is, why are you not doing the proper thing? It's just a procedural thing. Declare your wealth, declare your assets, declare your income, so that the relevant watchdog authorities could then tell the public, well, look, everything's okay with this person, at least based on the laws in the land that we have. By not doing so, now there are questions. At a time when the nation not only has a high crime rate, but we do question our politics a lot and always, and hope is one of those things that's just dying. It's supposed to be eternal, but in TNT, I don't know. Speaking about crime, moving on to the next topic, as we have questions with regards to our politicians, there's also, well, new leadership in town, and some interesting claims was made by the representatives of the Commissioner of Police on behalf of the TTPS. The TTPS is saying that they will go after the big fish, the Mr. Bigs. We assume this is, of course, the crime bosses, not just the gang leaders, but the real smugglers and power brokers and money movers. Here's the thing. On one hand, okay, you said it. I'm glad that you said it. It's one of the things that should be said. The now Commissioner of Police designate, Willa Christopher, also said she will do something about the murders. And these are things that she has to say. The problem is, we have already heard her predecessors and her predecessors' predecessor and her predecessors' predecessors' predecessor, and so on, say things, give us, say the things we want to hear. For all intents and purposes, promises that they can't keep. We will leave no stone unturned. We will redouble our efforts and go after every this and find every that, and we will get things under control. So now, granted, she's now into the role. She has to say these things up front. Give us a strong, clear, definite message. Set the tone for her tenure from the beginning. But as a member of the public, I want to know to what extent will this actually happen? You've said it, but we need to see something. Now, ironically, the commissioner had to miss a Joint Select Committee on National Security appearance, I guess I could say. She confirmed the committee, and then she had to cancel due to national security concerns. So then it was left up to an acting deputy commissioner to more or less unpack the plan. One of the interesting things that he said was that they understand, and again, these are things he has to say. To some extent, I am glad he's saying it. One of the things he is saying is that they understand that things were not working. So they're looking now for new strategies. And it seems as though he said re-strategize and operationalize the new strategies. That's a lot of buzzword, paramilitary mumbo jumbo, but from what I take it means, I hope it means implementation is happening sooner rather than later, if not already, right? Operationalizing certain key pieces of legislation, although this was, I'm not too sure, I did not watch the whole Joint Select Committee, this is what's reported. The TTPS is concerned about the uniforms that the officers are using. They're utilizing balaclava masks when interacting with the public, which is not something that they want to be doing. I think it's a way for officers to be distant, and it makes the interaction to some extent more difficult with the public. Also with regards to uniforms, also with regards to security, private security guards utilizing kits. That is to say, whether it is uniforms or perhaps worn gear, like perhaps masks and so on, that resembles police kit too much. Fine, that's all well and good. But really and truly, to some extent, now they're hoping that the proceeds from crime and explain your wealth, and that ruling will help, because now you could potentially investigate the big fish from the other end. You're not going up the criminal chain from the drug pusher on the street to his boss, to the boss of the whole gang, to his supplier, and hopefully to get to the big crime boss. You're coming from the other direction with regards to the money. At the end of the day, if you watch enough crime movies and whatever, but also if you read enough about crime, because a lot of these movies are based off of real life events, the laundering of the money is a big deal. Cleaning the money, so that you could use it freely without having to without looking suspicious. So this is okay. We have this, maybe it will help. And that does beg the question, if we needed to wait on this law and this ruling to actually implement utilizing investigative strategies from that angle, what other angles of criminal investigation are we not able to utilize? Because we just don't have the correct laws in place, or maybe there's something missing, or from what I understand, the gang legislation, the burden of proof is so high, for all intents and purposes, it might as well not exist. And the debates in Parliament over things like the anti-bail bill and stuff like that, to some extent, while they would potentially affect those who are in remand and are stuck in remand, etc., they don't actually make that much of a difference when it comes to detecting, investigating, and prosecuting crimes, and the people who are suspected to have allegedly done it. A lot of these things being debated don't necessarily impact that, for better or worse. So then what are we doing? Because right now, our number one concern is accurately detecting who the suspect is and trying to investigate, get evidence to arrest and charge. 75 out of 612 murders last year. If you want to put a dent into that, Madam Commissioner, I think, you need to step up the TTPS's game. Not necessarily your game, but you're the leader, for better or worse. That is one area where it's not about National Security Minister, it's not about the Coast Guard or the Army. That's not their job. This is your job. This is your service's job. This is something that we would like to see a little bit more than less than a sixth. That said, nabbing a big fish will go a long way to send a message to people thinking about being criminals, or the criminals that already exist in this country, that the days of you being near invincible might be finally over. But let's take a pin in that. That's going to be an ongoing thing to monitor. I want to go back to a topic that we spoke about a couple Fridays ago, and that, of course, is, it is about the cancellation of the International Soca Monarch, but more importantly, a couple of nights ago, Marshall Montano, he did an exclusive interview with CNC3 where he defended one show. And he basically called out those who want to say he put the final nail in the coffin, saying, well, look, at the end of the day, this model isn't working, and it's costing the promoter money, it's costing the taxpayers money, and it's not being patronized. So don't complain about his show being the final nail in the coffin when the show was dying for the last 5 to 6 years. And he's pushed back against the notion that International Soca Monarch was a show for young and upcoming artists. Which is interesting, because while I hear, people, back off screen have told me that somewhat regularly. That's a talking point. Because we've seen where Voice and other younger artists within recent years have been able to make more of a name for themselves. But to what extent is it really a product, that is to say International Soca Monarch, geared for that? It's not really geared for that. To be fair to Mr. Montano, the fact that Voice was able to make use of it in that way, and maybe Ola and a couple others, does not mean that the product is actually geared for that. Now, if you want something geared for that, fine. do that. But I think Mr. Montano is right when he said that the International Soccer Monarch was meant for the top names. And the problem is the top names didn't really want to participate. It's not always just Marshall alone. So now, I guess, really and truly, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but we have to face reality, right? We might not like that there's no International Soccer Monarch this year. We might not like that, Marshall has this clear control of being at the top of the ladder, at the top of the mountain. But at the end of the day, it's not as though he's doing all sorts of underhanded, cheating things, sabotaging this one song and that one concert. The man is doing what he has to do, and he's pointing out truths that exist whether or not he had a show on Fantastic Friday or not. So even if his show put the nail in the coffin, really and truly, do we think International Soccer Monarch was a healthy product? And perhaps we have to now face as a society, look, we actually have to put effort into these things. We can't just expect a government handout or somebody else to do it for us. And from our side of the line, that would have been to patronize the things that we want to see exist. Because your thoughts and prayers and hopes and well wishes don't help the people who have to finance these things and manage these things and troubleshoot and administer and deal with all of the headaches of these things, and if necessarily bear the brunt of the losses of these things. But your patronage, that will help. And it's not just in International Soccer Monarch, it's in other things in the country. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, I'll be welcoming, well, we'll be seeing my co-host, but we'll also be welcoming our guest. We're going to have a whole interview from the next break to the bottom of the hour. This is Talking Point on WESN. When we come back, a wide view on the economy. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website, www.fanzonett.com, for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the program. Good morning, I'm Keaton Shah, and it's a pleasure to be here in time actually to welcome to the program this morning Mr. Kevin Ramnaran. He's with us via Zoom. He's the former Minister of Energy, and he's also an economist. This morning we're having a wide-ranging interview on the economics of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Shah. And I can't remember the name of your colleague.
Okay.
Mr.
Michael Small. Well,
you're not Big Leg Shah.
No.
All right, Mr. Ramnaran, well, thank you very much for joining us. Now, the economy really, what we've been following up from the budget last year with new measures also implemented at the beginning of January. It seems as though things really took a bright turn when the Prime Minister announced the United States was waiving all sanctions and granting us a license to extract natural gas from the Dragon field, which borders Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. That was all good news, although that's going to take some time and negotiations are on the table. But currently where we stand, given our energy climate and the global energy climate, are we depending too much now on this Dragon gas field to be our saving grace while still just keeping afloat?
Well, that announcement happened on the 24th of January, 2 weeks ago, more than 2 weeks ago now. And I think it has quickly, not long after the Prime Minister made that announcement, I think a lot of reality started to dawn on that announcement. One of which is that there was this silence from Venezuela for almost 2 weeks. And I first noted that about 2 or 3 days after I said, Caracas has said nothing. One would expect that, the Venezuelans would have been reciprocating with some sort of celebration, putting out some release saying that, but of course, eventually Venezuela did say something, and this happened last week through their president. And the president of Venezuela indicated that, of course, they were not happy with the stipulations of the license, meaning that, which says that Trinidad and Tobago cannot pay Venezuela in cash. It has to be, we have to find some other mode of payment. The Prime Minister told the Reuters reporter that, they could work around that, they could find a solution to that and so on. But clearly, Mr. Maduro is not happy. He described that in very negative terms. He described that stipulation by the United States as colonialism. And he called on countries of Latin America and the Caribbean to reject it. So from that point of view, I don't know where this Dragon deal is. The other thing is the 2-year stipulation, the license for 2 years. I don't know that gives anybody any sort of comfort. If I tell you guys, 2 of you all, go and invest in a TV station now, and I giving you a 2-year license. No bank is going to lend you money for a TV station with a 2-year license, because you have no guarantee that license would be extended beyond 2 years. So there are, as I said the very first time when this was announced on the 24th of January, there's something we call the soda water effect in Trinidad. When you open a bottle of soda water, what happens? You get an initial fizz.
Yeah.
And then it dies out. So we have the soda water effect taking place here in Trinidad with this Dragon deal. Reality has now dawned. It is something that we welcome. If it happens, that's great. We need gas in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a shortfall. The shortfall is affecting us in very significant ways. We have had a 37% decline in gas production since 2010. We have the manifestations of that pellucid, closure of Atlantic Train 1, closure of methanol plants, closure of ammonia plants, and so on. So we need gas. And one of the ways that we seek to solve this problem that we have is we look to Venezuela because they have vast reserves of natural gas. And we've been in those conversations with Venezuela now for well about, if you trace Mr. Andrew Jupiter's recollection of this, going back to the 1980s. In 1989, just as a point of reference, the border between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela was defined by of course, international law. That's a maritime boundary that separates the Gulf of Paria into two and comes down between those islands, between Trinidad and Venezuela. So on our side, we have the Chaguaramas Peninsula, and on their side, they have the Giria Peninsula. I always get that pronunciation wrong. So we've been at this for a while. It hasn't happened. Will it happen? Well, we don't know, because I said when I was asked to give an opinion on when this gas would come, because that's what everybody wants to know. When is this gas going to arrive in Trinidad and Tobago? So I, at that point in time, said 3 to 4 years. I now believe that that's a very optimistic point of view. It could be more than 4 years, which takes us to 2027, 2028, and so on. It is going to take time. It's a long journey. The Minister of Energy went to Venezuela on Monday. Today is Friday. We haven't heard anything from the Minister of Energy as to what was the outcome of those meetings in Venezuela. We saw a very amorphous kind of almost, statement from the Venezuelan government that really didn't say much. So Dragon is not going to be our immediate savior. We have a problem in Trinidad with our economy, and that's where, I wanted to have a chat with you all. What propels our economy is the production of oil and natural gas. And, probably one day I'll be able to share some screens and so on, share some graphs and so on with you all. But there's a frightening correlation between the production of oil and gas and our economy measured in real GDP. If I show you those two graphs, they are like sitting on top of each other. As oil and gas production falls, so too does our economy. As oil and gas production increases, so too does our economy. And that production has been in sharp decline in the last 3 years. The outlook for production of both oil and natural gas is either flat or negative. And in that situation, I am of the highest GDP this country ever realized. And by that, I mean the wealthiest this country has ever been is in the year 2015. After that, the GDP has contracted by some 20%. There has been some growth in 2022 because, 2022 was an extraordinary year.
Yeah.
We had events happening external to Trinidad and Tobago over which we had no control, but which contributed to our economy. We got an additional $11 billion in revenue. Is that going to be sustained in 2023? I don't think so. The prices of natural gas in Europe and in North America and around the world have come down significantly. And one of the reasons for that is, I don't know if you all have noticed, but the weather in Europe, the winter in Europe has not been harsh.
Yeah.
The winter in the United States has not really been, as bad as it has been in previous years. So the winter hasn't been bad. Europe is also getting a lot of energy from wind at this point in time. And the other big factor is that the United States has really unleashed LNG production onto the world. The US is now the world's largest producer of LNG. Could you imagine that? The whole premise for the establishment of the LNG industry in Trinidad was to supply the United States and Spain. The United States in the early part of this century had falling natural gas production, and therefore they had to make up for that falling gas production by importing LNG, and that's where Trinidad came into the picture. The world has completely flipped to the point where the US is now the world's largest exporter of LNG, and a lot of that LNG is heading across to Europe. So the prices that gave us the bump in 2022 are not going to be around in 2023. I think the Prime Minister alluded to that in one of his many public statements, press conference or something like that. So as a country, we have a problem. And I don't want to be so negative and pessimistic to say it's an intractable, irretrievable position. But it doesn't look like gas production and oil production are going to recover anytime soon. In fact, oil production is in what I call a slow death march, down to zero. Yeah. We are now producing 59,000 barrels of oil per day. I think there might be oil wells in Guyana that produce that amount of oil, right? Oil production, when I left office, was 78,000 barrels of oil per day. It's now 59,000 barrels of oil per day. So even if oil prices are high, we are not benefiting as much as we should.
Mr. Ramnar, let me just interrupt you there, sir. I'm curious to know exactly how is this reflective of our debt to GDP ratio, and how will this also impact upon our foreign exchange reserves?
Well, the foreign exchange reserves of the country have fallen when the People's Partnership left government, and forgive me for using that as a point of reference because I was a major part of that government, so I remember the numbers. When we left government, foreign reserves was somewhere in the region of $10.5 billion US dollars. Foreign reserves are now somewhere in the region of about $6.5 billion. Within that $6.5 billion, we have monies that are there as a result of SPRs that the IMF gave out in 2021, I think it was, during the height of COVID. Yeah. This was part of the IMF rescue package for countries around the world. And whenever our government borrows US dollars internationally, whether it's through a bond offering or whether it's through borrowing from CAF, or CAF gives us US dollars, the bond offering gets us US dollars. But the operations of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago would pay its suppliers in TT dollars. So what it does is that those US dollars that we borrow, they are handed to the central bank, and the central bank puts them to the foreign reserves. And if the central bank then gives the treasury TT dollars for use of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So within that 6.5 billion, there's a lot of money that we borrowed, or IMF special drawing rights and so on. So that we are, as I said, we have a problem which is largely not being addressed, largely not being articulated, because many people in the leadership of this country can't articulate it. We have a problem in this country with aging. Yes. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
More people in years to come, and when I say years to come, we're talking about in the next 10 years so, a lot of people are going to be turning 60. I don't have the numbers on me right now, but there's a very good paper written by the central bank on this. And when people move from 59 to 60 and they go into retirement, they go into fixed income. Their pensions are fixed.
Yeah.
A person who retired as a teacher in 2009 is living on the same pension in 2023 that they were getting in 2009. What is happening is that those persons are being relatively pauperized by the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. And the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago is only going to go in one direction, which is up. So the purchasing power, if you have a pension of $8,000 a month, then that $8,000 in 2015 could have bought a certain basket of goods.
Yeah.
Paid for some services and so on. In 2023, that's a different $8,000. That's buying you a lot less. And in 2030, that is going to buy you even less. We are facing the prospect of an increase in electricity rates. There has been talk about water rates increasing. Food prices are definitely a lot higher than they were. Food inflation, of course, is a major factor. We all face the grocery and we all face restaurants and so on. So with our population aging, you have a lot of people moving towards the edge of poverty in Trinidad and Tobago. That
alone, because we've mentioned external factors as to what's driving inflation here in Trinidad and Tobago. But that what you've just mentioned with respect to the aging population and people becoming pauperized because of their fixed income, is that also a factor that will impact upon inflation here in TNT, an internal factor?
Well, the thing is this, right? For many years, and you see, this is why we have to have a very deep discussion about this economy. Mm-hmm. This economy, what is the productive side of this economy? The way to fight inflation, to me, is to produce more food, for example, more food, or to be more efficient with how you produce things like electricity and water and so on. But if you have your population pyramid, and that's what if you look at those diagrams on populations, countries start off as a pyramid, where the top of the pyramid is your old people and the base of your pyramid is your young people, right?
Yes.
And over time, the shape of that pyramid changes to a diamond, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, and then over time, it changes to an inverted pyramid. So we are headed to the inverted pyramid, where the majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago, I think we expect that the mode, meaning that that category where we have the most people, will shortly become that age group 50 to 59. And then the mode will become the people between 60 and 69. So are those people as productive as somebody who is 20 to 29 or 30 to 39? So the fact that you have less productive people and people who are more dependent, and there's something called the dependency ratio in the whole economics of aging. The fact that you have less and less people, let's say below the age of 60, means you have a smaller productive base. And that would not have been such a problem if oil and gas production were high, because oil and gas production has essentially underwritten the economic prosperity of Trinidad and Tobago since 1973. And there were some periods in the 80s when that wasn't so, and then there were some periods, in the early 90s. But by and large, for the last 25 years, gas, natural gas, and to a lesser extent oil have really underwritten this productive base of this country. And that is no longer going to be as strong as it was. So therefore, what was really paying the bills in the country is becoming weaker and weaker.
Well, Mr. Ramnath.
At the same time, we have an aging population, and aging populations also put strain on the health system. So the amount of money that we have to find to run the health sector is going to have to increase. So we are facing multiple challenges, gentlemen, and I hear a lot of politicians talk a lot of nonsense 24/7 in Trinidad and Tobago and not address these issues. And that really is something which bothers me.
I need to ask, because the one thing that they have spoken about this issue is raising the retirement to 65, and we're seeing this in France, there are protests over it, and there are other countries that's considering it. Morocco is now considering it, one of the latest countries. Would this be enough? Because I know that, yes, 65, 64, 63-year-olds might not necessarily be as productive as people in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, but they could still potentially be productive and not necessarily be stuck on a retirement package that starts 5 years earlier, that is fixed 5 years earlier, and they could contribute for 5 more years. Would that, I know it probably won't be enough, but would that help? Because it's been...
Yeah, guys, I hear you completely. I think, I mean, I once worked for a company which was a British company, and I think the retirement age was 62. I am all for increasing the retirement age, because at 60, I mean, my parents went home at 60, and they were probably the most productive, the most experienced, and, you know, they could have given Trinidad and Tobago easily 5 very productive years. So yeah, I'm all for the increasing of the retirement age. We also have to get more people contributing to the NIS in Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, my friend and colleague, Dr. Roger Hussein, has been a big champion for the regularization of the Venezuelan migrants in Trinidad and Tobago. You know, in the developed countries of the world, they look at migration differently. What has continually been replenishing the United States over history is waves of immigration. Of course, there's some pushback in some quarters on that, right? But the United States has been very successful, and to some extent to England and so on, and Canada, in taking the best and the brightest from the migrants and incorporating them into the economy. So I think we have to look at the Venezuelans in Trinidad differently. Many of them are educated people who, if you talk to them at one point in time, some of them would have worked in the oil industry. One of them sent me his resume. He has 29 years experience in drilling, right? I mean, we could use that. He worked for Halliburton and Baker Hughes and so on. Yeah. He's in Trinidad and he's doing, you know, he's looking for a job, right? So we could begin to incorporate the Venezuelans in a more formalized way into the economy, get them contributing to pension plans, get them paying taxes and so on, which will increase the tax base of the country. There are also many Trinidadians who are part of the informal sector who do not contribute to NIS, and it would be in their interest and, you know, perhaps in the interest of their employers to get them contributing to the NIB, NIS. So we have to look at that whole issue of the amount of people contributing to pension plans, because, as you know, it's no secret that the NIS is under threat. I think the people in charge of the NIB have come out publicly and said that the fund is reaching a point where it is putting out more to its beneficiaries than the money which is flowing in. And the way pension funds work is that, you know, the inflow of cash must be greater than the outflow for the pension fund to be sustainable in the long term.
Mr. Ramna, I have a final question to ask to go further with this, because I understand and I agree, yes, utilizing more of both our population and our migrant population to contribute to our systems and to be productive in our economy formally would be a good thing. But we do experience a brain drain. And I do think it's a lack of opportunity. Our private sector probably is not where it should be given the wealth that we experienced in this country's history. Diversification is bandied about a lot. Should there be more of a push to try to grow the private sector? Because that really should be the employment opportunity base, not the government, if we want any real long-term growth projection. Am I wrong with that?
Yeah, and I really wish we had more time, because, I mean, I'm not trying to mama guide you to all here, but you all are two of the more intelligent people who have interviewed me. And I enjoy talking to you all because I think you all are deep thinkers. We should come back with a whole entire show on this brain drain, because you know, from my experience as a lecturer at the Arthur Lockjack School of Business, I could tell you that we have been losing. If I talk to my former students, we have been losing highly educated young people for, one, the lack of opportunity, and two, even when they get jobs in the private sector and in the public service in Trinidad and Tobago, they are stifled. They are frustrated by toxic bosses. If you talk to young people and so on in the private sector, and we hold up the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago as though it's something incredibly efficient and so on. It's not. Right? The private sector is a couple notches behind the public sector, behind the public service in terms of inefficiency. We are frustrating our young people into the arms of the Canadians, into the arms of the British, into the arms of the Americans. And can you blame them? Yeah. There's no opportunity here in Trinidad and Tobago for them. And when they do get opportunity, they are abused, right? And their intelligence and their skills are not recognized. So I can't blame them for wanting to leave Trinidad and Tobago, and forgive me for being passionate about that, because I have, as I said, I have been exposed to them at the university, and I know their frustration.
Well, Mr. Ramnaran, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and you're right, I think a lot more
we should
time
come
is
back,
needed.
we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, certainly, a lot more. But keep well soon, thank you.
We'll contact you soon.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks again, bye-bye.
Well, that was the former Minister of Energy and Economist, Mr. Kevin Ramnaran. Folks, let's take a quick break here on Talking Point now. And when we return, we'll conclude things for the first hour of this edition.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
It's a fantastic February at Massage Haven as we celebrate Valentine's Carnival and our 1-year anniversary. For the entire month of February, take advantage of our special packages. For Valentine's, show your love with our Lovebirds and I Just Adore You packages. Carnival, let's help you glow with 20% off on all sauna and massage combos. And as we turn 1 year old, special complimentary Massage Haven tokens of gratitude and keepsakes within our anniversary week. Massage Haven, 157B, Monroe Road, Cunupia.
Welcome back to the program here on Talking Point, WESN Content Capital. Once more, we thank Mr. Ramnaran for joining us. Unfortunately, Mr. Ramnaran did have an engagement which he had to join, but would have actually appreciated if we had more time. That's the beautiful thing about this program. We're sure to have another episode next week, Monday. So any time after that, he'll join us once more. But so many things that he pointed out which are not being addressed enough within the public sphere. The aging population, for example, though there was a paper that was actually released by the central bank, it has not been exposed enough to the public eye. The situation with respect to the brain drain, it's not the first time that that's been mentioned on this program. I mean, Karen and ourselves here as host, we've actually exploited that topic to a certain degree. So,
and it's a topic that Trinidadians and Tobagonians speak about for years now, for decades.
Yes. And this situation with respect to the pensions, ICNTT, NIS, NIB, that is crucial. That is absolutely crucial.
I wanted to talk on that because with regards to the fixed pension, ironically, it puts the burden on the pensioners. But with regards to the NIS, they're not collecting enough to meet their payouts. That's traditionally what we're seeing with these sorts of retirement, social security, or social welfare schemes, where because the population is aging and the need, when these things were thought of, when they were developed, you didn't have a population pyramid that had so much elderly on that end. The balance was a lot different, so the younger population could have more than easily supported those who were retired, those who were, being more demanding on certain systems. But now, a lot of countries are facing that challenge as well. And I think that perhaps might be why we don't hear a lot of talk about it, because to be fair to everybody, I don't think anybody has thought of worldwide a good solution that isn't something particular or unique to them. And even then, like Japan, the United States, Canada, the UK, I think even Scandinavia is not immune to this. That's why you're seeing France looking to raise retirement age too at the same time.
China has an aging population.
Yes.
Because of that one-child policy. And do you know now that China their falling birth rate is such a sharp decline that they're now looking to offer free care to all parents who actually give birth to 2 or more children. As well as free fertility treatment. So that's interesting. Also in Japan as well, there's a huge issue with respect to the aging population. With respect to Trinidad and Tobago in particular, and with respect to our National Insurance Board, there are 3 things in particular that we should really examine further when we get the time and the opportunity. One, the NIB with its assets and the investment of its assets.
Yes.
NIB investments is a whole topic in itself. And how NIB investment has honestly throughout the years been a huge contributing factor to the state of where we are with respect to pension plans here in TNT. 2, corporate entities not making their contributions, right? And they're not doing it for any other reason other than the fact that they just don't want to make that.
And who is there to enforce these things?
But that's the third point. The NIS or the NIB is supposed to enforce these things. So in its own cause, if the NIB was to actually enforce these things, if the NIB was to walk into some of these companies, walk into some of these institutions, and actually realize, hold up, this institution is not paying NIS, it's not contributing to the fund as it should do according to law, so they're not paying NIS no matter what, that company will face serious fines and serious issues.
I think this goes back to what the caller from Chaguanas always says. We do not enforce our laws. We have no law and order. Other people who speak to us have said similar things, maybe from different angles. The long and short, Keaton, is when we had Timothy Hammersmith and Mr. Brian Alvarez, Mr. Hammersmith and Mr. Alvarez, they always went back to corruption. Corruption seems to be just one of the things that touches on everything. And I think it's almost like a house of cards or maybe a house of corruption, and that it builds upon the other. So when we see slackness with regards to one sector of the law and the economy, it's going to spread. And I think what Mr. Ramnarayan said, don't think the private sector is some holiness of efficiency. No. The holy land of efficiency is really 2 steps below, 1 or 2 steps below the public sector with regards to inefficiency, right? It's not that far behind. And that is something, to some extent, it's kind of true when you think about it. And that, in a way, is somewhat shocking because it means that avenues to try to rectify the problem They're not as easy as we would like to think, but the flip side is we have to put something in place to do it.
Well, who is going to put that in place?
I mean, I still think growing the private sector in general, but like Mr. Ramrani said, we also have to improve efficiency of the public and private sector.
It's just easy to say growing the private sector.
Right, that's why I said in general, but efficiency improvements across the board.
When I say it's just easy to say that, it's not even how. It's a matter of whether or not the private sector has investor confidence in Trinidad and Tobago.
That's a good point.
And our current economic climate. That's a huge thing. So as much as there are criticisms for the private sector, you also have to understand that, listen, if I see opportunity elsewhere, and I think it's sustained and it's viable, in other words, I'm going to invest in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen in 6 months. Bear in mind, that's with almost any business. But when you have to do a deep examination and a deep study, is TNT really a place in which any private institution or investor would say, this is going to be, well, this is a great opportunity, let me put my money into it?
To be fair to local businesses, what they do is they take what is successful here, and it's more or less, they've tapped out the market here and they take it abroad. But the flip side is how much new types of businesses, new products locally have we really seen? It's always drips and drabs, and then it might die out, it might be a fad, but we kind of just stuck. You know, it's not just development of the island, but just development on the goods and services we offer that we haven't necessarily seen.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have the opportunity to share your views and thoughts with us after the 9 o'clock news on the hour, for which we go to now.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Assault rifle among illegal items seized in ongoing anti-crime exercises. TTPS continues intervention at Rose Hill RC School. Licensing Division tells motorists to ensure vehicles are roadworthy. And internationally, more blackouts in Ukraine after Russian strikes. Now for the details. An assault rifle and quantities of ammunition and marijuana were seized by officers in ongoing anti-crime operations across the country on Wednesday. The Northeastern Division Gang and Intelligence Unit conducted an Operation Grand Slam exercise where they proceeded to the Barataria district and executed a search warrant for firearms and ammunition at the home of a 42-year-old suspect. The search resulted in officers finding the assault rifle loaded with one magazine containing 29 rounds of 5.56mm ammunition. 3 male suspects of Barataria and Santa Cruz who were in the house at the time of the exercise were arrested in connection with the find. Pupils of the Rose Hill Roman Catholic School are being empowered to enhance their resilience in confronting and addressing social issues that may arise in their school and home environments. In the third installment of its crime prevention series, Who's Writing Your Story? Fair to Freedom, officials at the Victim and Witness Support Unit recommitted to equipping the pupils with social skills. The first 2 installments were held in March 2020 and March 2021 at various secondary schools targeting adolescent males. Notably absent from the event was Top Cop Earl Christopher. The Licensing Division is urging motorists to ensure that their vehicles are roadworthy. This comes amid claims by the public that most road infrastructure remain poor.
We have noticed is that we are getting a lot of vehicles with defective suspension system, defective steering system, tires, very, very defective tires, electrical system, their lights, horn, sometimes even wipers not working, and they're coming for inspection.
From Monday, the Licensing Division will return to the appointment system for vehicle inspection.
And we can now shuttle and control the amount of persons coming there, and hopefully
those number of trucks and trailers and so forth you are seeing on the park, on the side of licensing, we should be able to see some decrease in that area.
In international news now, Ukraine is suffering more blackouts after cities and energy facilities were hit with fresh Russian aerial attacks. Officials said missiles and Iranian drones were used in a massive attack. Ukraine's top general said 2 missiles fired from the Black Sea crossed Moldovan and Romanian airspace, something that could raise tensions, especially as Romania is a NATO member. In the aftermath, a Ukrainian presidential aide reiterated a call for the West to provide fighter jets. Well, that was your news for the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Sing for your lover, baby, sing for your lover.
But that is not the song.
That is my version for the Valentine's Day promo on WESN.
WESN presents its Valentine's Day promotion, Sing for Your Lover.
Send us a video of the best rendition of your favorite love song for the one you love. All contestants have a chance to win a variety of exciting prizes. Send us your entries to thecontentcapital@gmail.com. All videos will be posted to our social media pages and will be shown on WESN.
Well, okay then. Let me sing for my lover. Let me sing for my lover.
My lover.
Sponsored by Indus Merchant, Joy Beautiful by Nature, A.A. Lakis, Rosabella Non-Alcoholic Wine, and Iliada Olive Oil.
Well, welcome back to the program. Thank you very much to Ms. Denise Martin for news on the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time where we open up the phone lines. But before we do, it's time for the question of the day.
And of course, the commissioner's representatives at the GSC said that they are going after the Mr. Biggs. But we do have to ask, while it would be a welcome sight to see, do you have confidence that the criminal justice system can successfully prosecute crime bosses in TNT? It's not just the police to arrest them, they also have to go to trial, get prosecuted. You know, witnesses have to give evidence, and so on and so on. And we've seen where the system falls short more often than not. So do you have confidence that we could actually see this thing go all the way through? Because I would argue we need to get some of these cases actually done. I just don't know if our systems are robust enough to get it done.
My question would be whether or not you're confident enough for Trinidad and Tobago Police Service intelligence to even identify who these major big fish are.
They know who the big fish are. That's the unfortunate thing. I have been told, I think even potentially from the man himself, and I mean the Prime Minister of the day, that they knew way back when, talking like 20 years ago, who the big fish were. You know, interacting with them at events and whatnot and whatnot. But, well, or at least that's what the intelligence suggested. But to what extent were they able to prove and prosecute? And this is where we could only speculate. But with regards to the perception of corruption in this country, to what extent is that going to get in the way as well?
All right, well, folks, let's open up the phone lines now. Call in and join us on the program. The numbers are on your screen. Join the conversation. Just a couple of things to remind you. One, when you call in, please mute your television so we don't hear ourselves. I mean, that really isn't very a pleasant sound, actually. But furthermore, please be mindful of the timing of your contribution. You know, don't drag on the call for 2 minutes plus. And be concise, be respectful of other viewers, their opinions. And also, as my co-host would say, don't call in at the 11th hour. call in now. You know, so the phone lines are open. And, well, if you have an answer for that question, certainly I'd like to hear from you, your thoughts and opinions. But in the meantime, just to remind you, if you didn't know, and I didn't know, we have a caller on the line with us from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller from Diego Martin.
Hi, morning.
Morning.
I want to take my time a little bit this morning. Go up, man. Before your time, there was a forensic expert from Canada called Bob Lindquist, who made some scathing remarks, even though employed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in relation to persons depositing large sums of money on a daily basis, right? Immediately after he disappeared off the scene, I believe they sent him back. Now, national insurance, I am a sole trader. As soon as I decided to leave the construction company I was working with and go on my own, I tried to register for national insurance. They bluntly refused. For about 5-6 years, they kept telling me, try us again next year, try us again next year, try us again next year. Now, I am a little over 60. I realized after paying all my income taxes, business levy, when I cross 360, that kind of thing, my health surcharge, diligently, I am now being told that old age, I'm not applicable for old age pension. Right? But the fellow who's sitting down on the block doing nothing, when he hits 65, he could apply for old age pension. Now, retrenchment and closing down of companies like Petrotrin and the dismantling of TSTT, those companies employed thousands of people, certainly did impact on the NIS pool. Right? And the last thing I would like to say is, the police commissioner, the new police commissioner, give her a little chance to settle down before they start to call up for a million meetings. Now let us settle into the job a little bit. All right, blessings. Take care.
Thank you, caller. That reminds me actually that Ella Edward Christopher will receive her official letter of appointment today from the Police Service Commission. She was, I think Sean mentioned that she was supposed to sit before a GSC 2 days ago. She was unable to make it. And it seems as though she gave actually a relevant excuse. She said it was due to matters of national security, of which she was absent. But I keep saying that Ella would Christopher give her an opportunity, give her a chance. With respect to, you know, give her some breathing space before, you know, let her settle into the job before you call it 1,000,001 meetings. Yeah, unfortunately, caller, that's just not how it works, you know, because the job never stops. Whether or not you're in an acting position, whether or not you're elect, whether or not you are a permanent, and it just never stops. So, you know, we are patient and we're waiting to see whether or not this certainly is changing the tides and a breath of fresh air from the TTPS.
Well, folks, it's your last chance to call in this week. Don't miss the opportunity and say you couldn't get in because you called at the 11 hour. But to that point, I think there's also the harsh reality that we had 600 plus murders last year. So normally you want to give somebody a chance. But when it comes to national leadership, you know, head of state, head of the police, attorney general, these sorts of roles, the amount of time you could give someone to settle in really can't be that long because, as Michael said, that's the nature of the beast. It's not necessarily fair, right, in the sense that you should have some time to settle into such a role with such big responsibilities. However, it is fair in the sense that I think this would be the expectation on anybody who takes the role at a time period like this. If our murder rate was 30, well then that's different. But it's not.
We're calling on the line with us from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Our new police commissioner, she was a teacher first before she became a commissioner. What she had to settle into, she was there a long time, it's years now, she's in the police service. What is it she has to settle into? She was not a teacher or a nurse before.
Thank you, caller. And I agree with you. I mean, she was a deputy commissioner, well, acting, but the mere fact is she was in the position prior to her appointment. and she was even acting as the Commissioner of Police. So, quite frankly, I think the time to settle in is it's just an opinion, I suppose. Caller on the line with us from Shogunus. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
I heard a very strange explanation this morning for the position on the NIS going bankrupt. And what was even stranger is you didn't correct him. Because I pointed out these reasons to you last year, in which I pointed out the importance of having actuarial reviews in our NIS. Because what the purpose of an actuarial review, you asked me the question, I explained it to you, is to make sure that the payouts are in line with the collection. So if you follow that, it is impossible for our NIS to go bankrupt. For all the reasons you have guessed all of them. And not only that, I gave you the reason at the time. And the reason at the time was almost 20 years ago, when the then Prime Minister, when it was time for the actuarial review to be done, he dictated to the actuarial people that the minimum he wanted was $1,000 at a time when the maximum was $700 and something. So the net effect was when they did that, the amount of money couldn't pay more than the minimum. And they had to take people's contributions too. He wasn't satisfied with that. 2 years after, he went and do the same thing and insisted on a minimum at $2,000. The ILO wrote and warned them that they were going to destroy the scheme. They didn't take him on, and then the government changed. And the new Prime Minister went this time to go further and make a minimum of $3,000. That is what have killed the NIS. Not only that, even before that, government had talked about putting together all their pension plans.
Professor, my sincerest apologies to do this to you, but we do have another caller on the line. I want to thank you for your contribution.
I told you all this already.
Yes. I'll come to that. You're not wrong, Professor, but I'll come to that. We do have a caller on the line.
Yes. Good morning, caller from Woodbrook. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
You know, I really thought it was so refreshing listening to Mr. Ramnarine this morning, because he did in fact touch on a wide range of issues relevant to the possibilities for Trinidad and Tobago. I pay particular attention to the fact that he talked about the private sector in not so sweet words, unless I got him wrong. When one considers that the banks in Trinidad and Tobago are a major part of the private sector, and when one considers that the banks really invest in any serious way in developmental initiatives, they only invest in cars and houses and things like that, that you must come and pay. But they will not invest in a television company that has all the tremendous potentials. They will not invest in somebody who wants to manufacture a new product and encourage, as it were, growth in the economy. They won't invest in the creation of a pan industry which has so much possibilities. I'm merely saying to you that the banks do one thing. They punish we, the people of the country. They charge us. If we go in the bank and we say good morning, they charge you for that. and that's the reality, that until we could get the banks in the banking sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm not excluding the credit union sector from that, unless we could get the banking sector and the credit union sector to become part of the productive mainstream of diversification and investment, we ain't going a place. Because I think I listened to Mr. Ramnarine this morning for the umpteenth time, and he has always convinced me that there is no future for oil and gas in this country, unless, of course, we put God out of our thoughts and decide to engage in Venezuela, and then we still have the problem, who will we sell the gas and oil products to?
Mm-hmm.
We have no more gas and oil, and we simply have to find the ways and means to get the banking and credit union sectors to be the engine room for development and initiatives in the country.
Thank you very much, caller. Well, just to go back to the professor, it seems as though you answered your own question with respect to it's impossible, once actual reports are completed. And I think you went on to answer how it is Trinidad and Tobago makes something impossible very much possible. Mm-hmm. You yourself answered your own question, because it may be impossible if you get things done right. Here in TNT, it's impossible to get things done right, but it is possible to get the impossible done.
But also consider this, because from what I understand, the mechanism that the professor is speaking about is, this is the money we have, therefore this is the total we're paying out. Now, I understand that that's a good way to prevent losses, but will it give a practical enough payout for the scheme to actually, live up to what it was meant to be? I'm not saying that it has to be a lot of money, it could be a small amount, but still something practical. So that's the question, or that balancing act. It probably might have been balanced too far in the other direction, but I don't think that would have solved the issue now.
We actually have a caller line with us from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
I'll get back to that point further after the calls.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning,
sir.
Yes, I just want to say to you, that interview is one of the better interviews I've seen on television for a very, very long time. And it's so pertinent to what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. And he has also seen what I've seen in both of you all. You're two good gentlemen that has a good future ahead of you all. And people really got to think and listen, and to people who could really put facts to them. I have been saying for a very long time, people have been having children in this country and not thinking how to mind them. That's a very important thing in this life.
Yes.
Before you set go, when you have children, you have to set goals and know how you're going to take care of your children. If that is happening, you wouldn't need so much of a big problem like we are now. So I think that, guys, you have a great weekend. Be safe out there, and thank you for taking my call. And chorus to Mr. Ramaran. I also look at him as a very good, decent, upstanding citizen. Thank you, and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much, sir. It's refreshing very much, sir. Thank you very much for that, and we wish you all the very best as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sean, continue.
No, so just that, Professor, you're right, but I think this is a case where both people could be right. And Mr. Ramaran is speaking about the practical reality that the scheme faces now. Again, if we limit it to what the scheme took in, potentially the payments it might be so insignificant that one would even question having it at all. So that's the catch, that's the balancing act for any social program or even any entity that's owned by the government that has to take social considerations into regards, like the ferry service and the air bridge that are taking losses right now.
We have a caller on the line with us from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Tunapuna. I want to touch a little bit on the NIS.
Mm-hmm.
If you all remember well, certain people was to go to the information to find out, Freedom of Information Act, to find out what is the status of the NIS in this country. In just a few years ago, you all remember that?
I think so, caller. I can't remember the exact, but...
Let me give you some figures and tell you why it is that we are falling short by about 21 or 25% of income from the NIS in respect of contribution. In the year 2016, the incoming government, at the end of 2016, they met 516,900 and something membership who were contributing to NIS. 3 years after that, before the COVID, that figure went to 402,000 people who are making contribution, because the rest of them lose their jobs. I want you all to understand that. And it went further after that when they started to make excuse about COVID. So we had a bigger reduction from 16,000 to 4,400 and 2,000. That's the first 3 years that the present administration came into power. Before COVID, 112,000 people had gone. And after that, more people went from COVID. So that is where the shortfall is coming from. 25% of contribution was taken away because people lose their job. Go into the NIS Freedom of Information Act and get that information. It's there for everyone to see. So we cannot make all kind of stupid excuse about who raised pension and who raised this is the reason for it. That is the main reason for it.
Okay, caller, thank you.
Thank you. And then there's also the fact of what one of the previous callers mentioned. You know, you lost your job. What did we see in the pandemic? You tried to be self-employed, but then you're getting told you're getting roadblocks with regards to NIS.
Yes, that is I suppose factor number 4. The other part of it is whether or not these sole traders over the course of the pandemic, given that everything more or less was practically shut, if whether or not they could have contributed to it. And I think that's what the caller was just raising. It was like COVID just seemed to become an excuse for things that happened prior to the pandemic.
Although I do want to say, I think though that this was a trend that might have existed before COVID, caller, and we do have to acknowledge the fact that the data is in line with what we see internationally, right? And this is before COVID. We've seen the issues of an aging population before COVID. So COVID could have contributed to it and accelerated it greatly, but I don't think it would have not been a problem if COVID didn't happen.
I think COVID-19 just exposed or exacerbated conditions that existed prior to the pandemic.
It revealed a lot. It revealed a lot in a lot of nations, but especially in TNT with our NCD issues, with our health system issues, with our border security issues.
Well, I think we were well aware of that before.
With our immigration law issues.
Compounded it, I suppose. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, well, there's so many factors and so many issues, all of which we cannot deeply analyze with the time that we have. But for now, we have closed the phone lines for this edition of the program, and for the weekend, we want to thank all the callers for their contribution this morning to Talking Points, and thank Mr. Ramnaran once more for his presence and for his insight as to where we are as a nation and where we are heading. We look to welcome him again in the future. Now, let's end things on a lighter note. I mean, we have a week, just over a week before Carnival hits.
Mother of all Carnival, Keaton. You have to get it right. You can't just say Carnival. It's the mother of all Carnival, just without Sokamana.
That being said, have you decided who you're backing for Road March?
I won't be on the road, so it kind of doesn't really, doesn't.
Okay, let me rephrase that question.
I won't be on the road.
What's your favorite soca song? For this season so far, anyway. I'm not talking about garlic sauce. The song that you like.
Yeah,
not from all round.
That song is kind of been a while.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite soca song for the year 2023 thus far? Remember, interestingly enough, they might have a few people who will still release songs between now and next week. For Road March, that's really what people are aiming for.
I guess it might be. I don't know if this will qualify, but the most interesting and creative thing I've heard is The Meeting Place. Is that the correct title of the song from Montano and his collaboration with the trumpeter Mascala?
Hugh Mascala?
Yeah. So because again, you know what? This goes back to the issue with regards to the calypsos, the pans having to use old-time calypsos. To me, that song evoked that art form of a melody and a story. Yes, it wasn't necessarily heavy social commentary, but it was a creative song. It was a song with a different type of vision. It didn't follow the same usual formula of soca, whether it's groovy or power. And I found that was just the concept alone, I was happy to say.
I appreciate you answering that question for me, because I really thought that he was going to say his favorite soca for the year thus far came from the Love Movement. Thank God that's not the case. But I will say
you're going to get me in trouble with a lot of people with that statement, you know, Keegan. You're going to get, anyway.
My favorite soca for the year thus far, I'm kind of split. I love Bungie Garland's Hardfet. I absolutely love Bungie Garland's Hardfet. I like Patrice and Kester, their song Like Yourself. But you see, there is something about Ola Tunji's Engine Room that I just can't get out of my head. It is
So I heard one of Nyla Blackman's tunes for the first time yesterday.
Which one was that one?
I can't even remember at this point. But I will say this, I find that I very much enjoy her style, her music, her melodies, the unique qualities of her singing and her, and you know, the songs that she has. So I understand, you know, all of the thing is, what we're hearing from a lot of the other artists is for the most part kind of along the lines of what we've heard before.
When has that changed? Has Nyla Blackman changed as well? I mean, it's more along the same lines as before.
Differentology was not what we heard before. You know, every now and then Marshall will drop a gem. Soca Kingdom was not necessarily. They had some similarities, but
you realize that you're picking one song from seasons ago. One song, you know, it's just one song.
Do I look like a calypso soca savant that knows all of the offerings?
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I will conclude Talking Points for this week and for this show.
You brought it up, buddy. Don't complain about the... Listen, a good lawyer should know. Don't ask questions that you don't already know the answer to.
Stick to Super Bowl and Love Movement. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Talking Point. Thank you very much to all our callers. Thank you very much to our directors. And on behalf of Sean and I, well, we wish you all the very best for the weekend ahead. And just remember, today is a good day to have a good day and a great weekend ahead. Enjoy it, be safe. And should things go okay, hopefully, we'll see you on Monday morning.
Super Bowl, baby!
WESN.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the content capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who